This program was produced through the facilities of the Telecommunications Board of Northern Kentucky, providing professional video cameras, editing, studio, and training to participating communities. For more information, log on to tbnk.org. Welcome to Discover Northern Kentucky. In this two-part episode, we will travel to the Dinsmore Homestead to learn about the fascinating family history, the Dinsmore Foundation, and the State Nature Preserve. In 1987, the Dinsmore Homestead Foundation purchased the house and land from the ancestors of James Dinsmore. The heritage of the homestead and its educational importance is a treasure to Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati. The Dinsmore family's interest in preservation is the reason the house and land survived, but the commitment of the foundation volunteers is why the homestead continues.
I think the Dinsmore Homestead is one of the finest examples of our history in this region. I think for Cincinnatians and Northern Kentuckians, this place represents a family's commitment to the area, and since we have so much original material here, people can really step back and see what life was like for this family. And this family took part in all aspects of life. I mean, everything from sending their kids to private boarding school, because they were an elite family, to, Julia, scrabbling out a living as a farmer and going broke and barely able to survive. I mean, her journals tell you what a hard life that was as a single woman. And so they really participated in all aspects of life in Cincinnati. And nationally. That's what's even more interesting, is nationally. I read a biography just recently of Alice Roosevelt Longworth, Teddy Roosevelt's daughter, who married Nicholas Longworth. And Nicholas Longworth was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, but he was the congressman from Cincinnati. And the Longworth family, very famous, very old, grew the grapevines on Mount Adams. I mean, the Longworths were one of the leading families in Cincinnati. And Nicholas Longworth married Alice Roosevelt in a big and fancy wedding in the White House. And they were the most famous couple in Washington for many years. Well, I'm reading this biography of Alice Longworth, and every now and then I thought, she's talking about Eleanor Roosevelt and Franklin, who was her cousin. They were both cousins, and and I'm thinking, I'm waiting for Isabella to show up. I'm waiting for Isabella to show up, and sure enough, she starts citing letters from Isabella Dinsmore. First, she started with Rough Riders. She starts mentioning these guys' names. All of Isabella's husbands are in this book, and I'm going. And sure enough, the letter showed up from Isabella. So, I mean, it's just, when you pick up a book about Andrew Jackson, or you pick up a book about the either Franklin or Teddy Roosevelt, their family, and all of a sudden, the Dinsmores pop up. And you think, well, how could that be? But they were related to all those presidential families and were both involved in national politics and then rooted here, which is really interesting. Yeah. It reminds us, too, that this part of the country and Cincinnati were very, very important parts of the country in the 19th century. Cincinnati was a major city. I heard a book review the other day of someone who was talking about Cincinnati and said, well, you have to realize that at one point almost everybody in the cabinet went to UC Law School about the time of Teddy Roosevelt. The UC Law School, all the Tafts went there, all these people, they all went to Washington. So this was a very important part of the country turn of the century. And the Dinsmores were in it. Maybe the Dinsmores epitomize that. I mean, they chose to live out here in the country. I mean, I can't even imagine how long it took to get from here to town when they went up to Cincinnati. But yet Cincinnati was a cultural capital, and you see that here in the house and in the family. Well-educated, highly literate, intellectual family, book collection beyond compare, traveled all over the world when they could. And yet they lived out here in Boone County. But that says something about the region they lived in, too, because they could partake of culture but still live here. Very interesting mix. Well, we have very good friends who live in Louisville, and he's a docent at the Clark House, which is Locust Grove, which is a beautiful house in Louisville. But Locust Grove, while it's fully restored, has no original material. And then can't even tell you much about the family because they don't have anything. So they came here to visit us. We brought them to Dinsmore. And he was just entranced because he said, it's real. Everything you have is real. It belonged to the people who lived here. He's going to come back and wants to bring the docents from Locust Grove because it's so unusual to have a home where we actually know, where the china came from and when they bought the piano and everything else too. So it's, people come through here. And the other thing that happens at Dinsmore, people become entranced by it. I can't explain that. They come here, and if they visit the house and they sit on the back porch or take a walk on the grounds, they get captured by it. There's something almost mystical about it. And I don't think it's just stepping back into history, because you go to other historic sites and you feel like you go to Williamsburg and go places that have complete costumes. Everybody looks great. But you come here and there's something about its place in nature, the restfulness. It's as if the family just got up and left for a weekend trip and everything's still here. And they said, well, come and stay and enjoy our backyard. I mean, there's nothing like it. They just get totally entranced by it. If you talk to our volunteers, they'd say that's what happened to them. Well, there's so much to find out about this family. And it's supposed, you got your great aunt passed away and somebody called and said, you want to come help us sort stuff out? And you walk into your great aunt's house, there's a house full of furniture, then you go in the attic and there's everything from your family forevermore. And you think, my Lord, I could stay here for years unpacking these boxes and figuring out whose wedding dress it was or whose letters these are. And I think people feel that way up at the Dinsmore, and they walk in and they're like, oh, well, and our volunteers start reading stuff and getting involved, and they want to open every drawer and go through everything because there's so much. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful attic.
To maintain the homestead, the foundation holds fundraisers throughout the year.
We have a number of events, some of which are major fundraisers and some of which are just community activities. And then in addition, we have the school programs, of course. In the spring, we have the Derby Day, which we just celebrated. And Derby Day started a couple of years ago, and it turns out to be a wonderful fit for Dinsmore. We have maybe 150, 200 people under a tent in the front yard. We watch the race. Interesting enough, everybody stands up and sings when it's time to sing My Old Kentucky Home, even though they're singing to the television set. And people, their Kentuckiness comes out, as it's a real celebration of life in the bluegrass state. And we have a really wonderful time with that party, I think. It's something about being out in the country and being outside, and having mint julep and watching the race that just fits Dinsmore. And then in the summer we have a summer concert, which in recent years has come to be a Cajun festival or a Mardi Gras festival, essentially. So we have Cajun food and listen to what I would call roots music. And I think everything we do at Dinsmore is pretty much alternative or roots music, which again fits Northern Kentucky, I think. And then in the fall, we have two events. We have the gala, and that's our big fundraiser. Again, we have music, we've had performances, we have auctions, dinner, try to raise some more money for Dinsmore. It's a big party. And then we have Harvest Festival, which I think is our gift to the community. In Harvest Festival, for 2 days, we have the house and grounds open, and we have buggy rides for the kids, we have horseback riding for the children. Sometimes we've had animals to pet. We have games and crafts for children. We have crafters come and set up. We have singing. We have music. We have storytellers. And we have an attic sale where we sell each other's old flea market stuff to raise money for Dinsmore. It's quite famous anymore. And we raise about $1,000 on selling stuff, which isn't bad for 2 days. But the thing about Dinsmore and Harvest Festival, it's a family event. And so we see people bring all the little ones. And there's something unique about Dinsmore and children, because you bring kids through the fence, through the gates, and kids can run. And I have never seen a child here who felt intimidated or fearful or anxious in any way. It's a very family-friendly place, but more than that, the scale is right for kids. You walk in the door, there's a gate, there's nothing to be afraid of. Little tiny people are just really comfortable running around the lawn, and they feel like home. There's something about being somebody's home, and I have just never seen a child be worried at all. And the parents are nearby watching, and the kids are enjoying the horses and the crafters and people making wood crafts and making soap, and it's a really wonderful family event. I bring my granddaughters, of course, who come and do the same thing, but it's just really a fun day. So we do that 2 days in the fall, and that's a great event, and a lot of our neighbors and local people come for that. We do Christmas at Dinsmore, which is part of a community celebration, and that's wonderful. The garden club decorates the whole place in natural greenery, And then we are open daytimes and the evenings, one evening, Friday night, and we have some period dancers and period music, and it's just beautiful. I mean, Dinsmore by evening light is just gorgeous. One thing about Dinsmore, even in a festival day, when we have 500 people here and I don't know, antique cars parked on the lawn or whatever, Dinsmore is removed from the modern world. You don't hear cell phones ring. Coverage isn't real good out here. You don't hear televisions. You don't hear radios. I mean, it's a retreat from the modern world. There's not all that busy stuff, you know, video games, and kids never miss it. They don't care. They don't ask where the television is, a video game. They've got plenty to do here. You know, they want to go for a hike and wander around in the barn, and they're just always comfortable. It's great.
For generations, the Dinsmore struggled to make a living off the land. Today, the Dinsmore Foundation struggles for funding to keep the homestead running.
This is a historic house, and historic houses across the country are having a real hard time. Some of the historic houses around the country have been sold back into private estates, actually. It's a pretty scary thing that are run by foundations, then they gave up and sold them back to a private owner and got out of the business of having them open. A lot of reasons for that. It's very difficult for a historic house to stay in business when it's self-owned. Really, the only way to do it is to either have a major source of income or to have serious government subsidy or to have a big endowment. So the Dinsmore has an endowment. We were very fortunate. We operate on the basis of admissions, festivals and galas, raising money that way, raising money through memberships. And we do have a society called the Julia Dinsmore Society, which is for people who give larger donations as members. And then we do get some money from the county, which is wonderful, but it's going to be cut this year. There are so many entertainments in the world for families. I mean, we can't compete with a major theme park, even though they charge $50 a day to get in. There's so much available to entertain people that getting people interested in going to the past to be entertained, you know, the competition's terrible. So relying on admissions in any of these historic houses is very difficult. And then you have to think of something new so that people will come back another time. So a lot of people you could program to do that. And costs keep going up. I mean, whether it's energy or it's fuel. I mean, the fuel bill here is, what, thousands of dollars a month to keep the place heated in the winter. So costs go up and interest isn't as strong. And there's a limit on what you can charge in a historic house. So as I said, some houses have been sold back to private owners just to preserve them. We're not doing that. We're holding on. You know, we're pulling that budget together one way or another every year. But it's, you know, we really need to either raise an endowment that would be big enough to pay for most of our operating expenses, or figure out a new way to get revenue. You know, we solicit membership from everybody who's visited, and but most of our memberships are small. Most of them are family memberships. Most people choose to pay $25 or $50 for a family membership so they can bring the children and then come and visit. I mean, this is not, we're not located in what I would call a well-to-do area. This is rural, and so many volunteers have memberships, or members of the Garden Club, the Florence Women's Club. They have a membership, and they can bring their kids, and so that's a small thing. We have not been successful in reaching into, say, Cincinnati, for people who would join here, like they join the Staff Museum or they join the Art Museum, that they would join Dinsmore. And we don't have very many of those. And when people come here, they love it. It's just a matter of getting to think it's someplace they should come back to twice a year. In Cincinnati, I think we're not very well known. I think we get people out here to visit. I think our biggest attraction is probably the things in the house. People are interested in antiques. Period furnishings love to come out here and see the house. And there is a word of mouth among the people who are interested in historic homes and their interiors that know about the Dinsmore. I don't think we've captured the historic imagination of Cincinnati yet. I'm not sure people in Cincinnati who are really interested in history, say members of Cincinnati History Museum, really understand about Dinsmore and what's here. And we'd have to figure out how to do that. I mean, one way to do it would be to figure out a way for our collection of papers, diaries, journals to be more accessible to people. You know, that might be a way to go. Maybe we put things on the internet eventually and say, click here, and if you want more, you need to come out to Dinsmore. Or, you know, I mean, maybe it's digitizing stuff eventually that'll work for us. But I don't think people in Cincinnati really understand the history and how the history is linked to national history. When people ask me about the Dinsmore, I talk about the family and how they're linked to all these famous families and what an interesting family it was. I mean, why they got here, built a house, their issues with slavery, and then for women particularly, because I'm interested in women's studies, to talk about Julia and having this homestead run by a woman for years and years, decades and decades, and her links to the women in her family and the children and the nieces. And, you know, it's a fascinating story, and that they continued to be linked to important families in this country, but lived here in Boone County. And it's like this hidden treasure. It's like, why are these people here? But they were. This is their home. And I think the people and the family are just fascinating, just a fascinating family history.
I hope in the future that we do get more partnerships with schools in the area. We do have a bit of a partnership with Northern Kentucky University, but I would like to see this used more as an educational spot for the region, so that more and more kids can come out here. University students, I think this is a great place for anybody studying public history or history, because you have the primary sources, like I said, the material culture. There's an awful lot out here that university students could get something of as far as American history goes.
The establishment of the homestead was not guaranteed, but Martha Breasted was determined.
The story that Martha gave us was that when she and her brothers decided that they would like to make this a house museum, they offered it to the University of Kentucky, and they declined, saying that they couldn't afford it. When she offered it to Northern Kentucky University, she got the same answer. And I don't know that she offered it anywhere else, but I know Martha, and I don't think she gave up. I think she offered it to every university within like a 100-mile radius of this house. But they all gave her the same answer: we can't afford it. So then she decided that she would just take matters into her own hands, and she'd raise the money herself, which unfortunately she was unable to do. However, some friends in the area knew Martha and knew of the circumstances and said, give us a year and see if we can raise the $1 million that had been established as the purchase price. So that's when a group of men, and we have a list of those people, and I don't have it in front of me, got together and decided, with the help of experts in every field, that this site was well worth preserving. So fortunately for us today, 20 years later, everything that was done in the beginning was done correctly. And they did call in people to appraise the books, the furniture, the clothing, the buildings, the house and buildings, and they were in total agreement. And some of them in such total agreement, they were willing to contribute money. They all saw the worth of it. They saw the value of not only all the outbuildings in the house, which had not been changed. It was as it was built in 1842. The only change was the wing that was added here on the east in 1916. And because everything in the house was original. And basically, we have the story of the family preserved in their writings, their letters, their deeds, their poems, their notes to each other, receipts. And we're unique in that respect. There are very few places in the United States where you both have the original buildings, the original furnishings, and documentation. So nobody disputed the fact that this was not worth preserving. One of the interesting things is that the Brown Foundation did give a very sizable donation, and did a lot of individuals, as well as companies and groups of people who really knew this site for what it was worth. And when they were running out of time and needed just one more big push they went to the Goodrich Foundation and told them that one of their family members is buried in this cemetery, this family cemetery. And that being so, they donated the amount that pushed us over the edge. Now, we were past the due date, but everybody wanted to cooperate and get this thing off the ground. So every time I go to the cemetery, I go by Catherine Goodrich's tombstone and say, Catherine, I am so sorry you died here under the circumstances, but thank you. Because she came here at the age of 17 to visit, and I'm not sure what the purpose of the visit was, but she became ill and died. And the fact that she's buried here made us all think, and until proven otherwise, that she died of a contagious disease. So that's why Catherine Goodrich, one of the cousins, actually her mother was James' sister, Susanna. So that's why Catherine's here, and that's why I always apologize to her, but thank her. Up in the upstairs bedroom, we have her little trunk that she brought with her. And it's always put out at the foot of the bed as a reminder of one of the people who's buried in the cemetery. Now, getting back to the foundation, once the purchase price was established, then of course Martha donated her part of the property, but she wanted this to be not just the story of her family, but she wanted it to be the kind of place that told the story of many families in this country who were the backbone of the people who were willing to do whatever was necessary and participate in government and be part of the changes that were necessary as we came on from the Revolution on. And she wanted it to be that kind of place where people could come and get a sense of what it was to be like growing up in all of these periods. That was one of the things that the first group who established the foundation had to deal with, because most historic sites deal with a period in history. But this particular site covers such a long period of history, you can't say, well, we're going to show you what it was like in 1890 or in 1920 or back in 1849. It covers a long period of history, and you have to include it all. That's what makes it such a vast amount of knowledge, and you can literally teach American history through the family. And in 1989, that fall, after we started the inventory and others had preceded us and had been working on it, the board was able to open the downstairs to the public. So then we continued the inventory for the next year, and we were able to open the upstairs to the public. And then we continued another year doing the attic. And although that has been open at certain times, but is not open generally to the public.
Volunteers become fascinated in the homestead and learning not just about the families, but also about the region, U.S., and national history.
Wow, what an experience. Of all the things I have done in my life, this has been one of the most interesting and rewarding. It's like an education in itself. You know, going through the house, and we both felt the same way, and everybody else did too at first, that we're intruding on their privacy. We shouldn't be handling their things. But you have a job to do, and you soon get over that. And as Margaret had said earlier, everything's exciting. It's a discovery. And once you do that, then you're hooked.
Children that visit the Dinsmore Homestead have their own learning experiences.
We have the children go back to the 1700s, and for a week out of their life they live here by the day, of course, and live according to that kind of life, and they love it. I remember a little girl, we were making dinner, and I had the vegetables, and the little kids were around me, and I had corn on the shuck, and I was told the little children, now this is the corn, we're going to shuck it. And when I pulled that down, one little kid says to me, oh, there's corn in there. And I said, yes. I said, didn't you know that's corn in there? She said, no, we don't get corn like that. I said, well, how do you get corn? She says it's in a little plastic thing, and there's like 5 of them, and they're all the same size, you know, in the grocery store, how they are packaged. And I thought that was so cute because she never really knew how corn came to be in this protective covering. So that was another thing we could talk about, how things are protected while they're growing, and then you take that off and you have it. So there were a lot of learning experiences here in this place because this place is here. Wow. And so it's wonderful for many reasons, most of which I think is its role in history and its role in Boone County. I think they will get a story that they've never heard before, from a point of view that they've never heard before. And it's such an historical place, and reaches out, as I said, not just to Kentucky, but even to Indian territory. Uncle Silas was an Indian agent. It was just everybody here was something from somewhere else. And so when you come to Kentucky, to Boone County, you think you're just coming to Boone County to learn about a Boone County house. That would be not true. What you would learn about was many people all over the world, people you heard about on TV, you read about in the papers, you see them in history books. They're here. Parts of their lives are entwined with parts of the lives of these people. And that's fascinating because it's personal. It seems personal. Christine and I would sit out here on this porch here and think, all the people that were here and came through here and had something to do with this place, they're people we all know. And then, like when I went to the grave site up there, they're people we love. We love these people. And so I want everybody else to see it and to hear it and to love it. And they would tell me later, I'm so glad we came. This was the most fascinating thing I've done in a long time.
Well, I think we all learn from the past, and so preserving it is very important so that we don't make mistakes that we made before, so that we get a good idea of, you know, what came before us and the people, and, you know, how they thought, what their values were, just to compare them with today. I think it's very important. People are amazed that that there is a place like this. You know, the preservation that's gone into the place is wonderful, and it's like walking into the past. I'm sure you've heard that before. It really is walking into this house. You have images of how the things were used, and there is so much history here. And a lot of people, I think, will come out to one of the fundraiser things, whether it's Derby Day or the Harvest Festival or the Christmas celebration that we have here. And so it's a combination of things. It's a fun thing to do. It's a family place to go. And yet you can combine it with learning a bit about the history of the place. Well, I guess I would say that more people would take the opportunity to come out and see what a jewel this place is, because that's what it is. It's important on so many levels, and for people to actually come here, they can see that. People are always surprised when they come and just see what's here.
When you compare the Dinsmore Homestead to other historic homes, whether in the area or in the nation, one of the more interesting differences of the Dinsmore Homestead is not just that they have a lot of these older buildings where you can look at the walls, you can see how it was made, you can see what people went through when they were building these structures, but the fact that the family up and left with everything, with leaving everything in the house. So you can see what people valued. We didn't go out and buy things that we think they would have valued. We have the things that they actually did value. We have little notes